Barbara Whitfield, HOA enforcement chair, had been screaming at Thomas Reeves for 5 minutes, her fuchsia jacket a beacon of rage against the morning calm.
Those bugs of yours are aggressive. My dog got stung and I want them exterminated.
Ma'am, my bees have pollinated this valley for 30 years. They're not aggressive.
I don't care. You'll hear from the HOA every single week until every last hive is gone, and I'll make sure of it personally.
Thomas didn't argue. He simply adjusted the smoker can in his left hand. Then the sound of heavy tires on gravel cut through her tirade. A black SUV with an EPA seal rolled to a stop right behind her, 2 agents stepping out like clockwork.
The EPA? What are federal agents doing here?
Thomas Reeves allowed the faintest shadow of a smile to cross his weathered face. She had no idea she'd already filmed her own confession. 3 months earlier, Thomas Reeves rose before dawn, as he had every day for 3 decades.
Morning, ladies. What's the valley offering today? 60 hives, each one a line of queens stretching back to Granddad's first colony.
He inspected frames with the gentle rhythm of a man who'd earned his bees' trust over a lifetime. The apiary was grandfathered under old zoning, a sanctuary that predated the subdivision crawling toward his fence line. What Barbara Whitfield never checked, because she despised paperwork, was that Thomas held a federal certification most beekeepers never heard of. He was a contracted EPA pesticide inspector, trained to identify illegal chemicals and authorized to collect evidence for federal court.
The credentials sit locked in the shed, next to the sample vials. Not a secret, just not something you announce over coffee.
To the neighborhood, he was the quiet beekeeper. To the EPA, a silent line of defense. Silence holds until a woman in a fuchsia jacket decides your bees are her problem. The first alert came on a Tuesday. Barbara Whitfield strode through the apiary gate like she owned it.
Mr. Reeves, I'm the new HOA enforcement chair. Your bees stung 2 children at the community pool yesterday.
My bees forage half a mile from the pool, ma'am. Are you sure it wasn't wasps?
Don't play games. I've already drafted a violation notice. You'll get one every Monday unless these hives disappear.
Ma'am, I'd like to show you something.
He unclipped the badge from his belt, a small plastic card with the EPA seal, his inspector number stamped beneath.
An EPA badge? So you file paperwork. That doesn't give you a pass on HOA rules. I've dealt with hobbyists before. You'll fold when the fines hit.
She sees the badge and thinks it's a wristband for some beekeeping club.
Barbara Whitfield left without another word, but the campaign against Thomas Reeves had just begun. The first certified letter arrived the following Monday, stamped with the HOA's officious logo. Notice: Violation 42C, excessive beehives posing public nuisance. Weekly fine, $200 per hive. 3 days later, she convened an emergency HOA session. The agenda item: apiary abatement.
This beekeeper has ignored every courtesy. I move we authorize immediate contract of pest control.
You have no jurisdiction over these hives. They've been here since before the HOA existed.
Then we'll amend the charter. I didn't take this position to let a hobbyist threaten our children.
After the meeting dissolved, Thomas caught her in the parking lot, his voice low but certain.
You don't want this fight. Stay away from my bees.
Or what? You'll write a report? I'll have a solution before your EPA friends even blink.
The apiary lay silent under a half moon, unaware of the phone call she'd make hours later, a call that would seal its fate. Barbara Whitfield made that call from her Range Rover in the parking lot of a closed strip mall. 20 minutes later, a dusty exterminator van pulled up beside her. Mike Dunn stepped out, stubble dark and tense.
I need a yard sprayed. No questions, no receipt. Can your drone handle a couple dozen bee boxes?
Lady, I don't torch insects without permits. What you're asking is
$5,000, cash, tonight. You fly, spray, and vanish. No one will ever know.
$5,000 pays 2 months of child support. And nobody cares about bees. Fine, I'll use the neonicotinoid mix. But I fly at 4 a.m., not a minute earlier. You stay home.
The envelope disappeared into his coveralls. Barbara's smile sharpened like a blade.
I'll be watching from my window. Don't disappoint me.
By the time the van's taillights faded, the fate of 60 hives was already decided. At 4:03 a.m., a mechanical whine sliced the pre-dawn quiet over Thomas Reeves's apiary.
$5,000. Keep the drone low, hit every box, and get out before anyone sees.
That sound, a drone? At this hour, nothing good comes with a drone.
He saw a dark quadcopter releasing an acrid mist across his hives. By the time he reached the yard, the drone had vanished, leaving only a chemical haze. Dawn brought a silence that thundered. No hum, no buzz, just dying clusters.
30 years of queens, and now they're nothing but soft, dead bodies on the landing board.
He picked up a worker bee coated in a sticky residue that smelled of industrial poison.
Neonicotinoid, off-the-books concentrate. Whoever did this knew exactly what they were using.
Half the hives had collapsed. He stood among the carnage, grief hardening into something colder. By mid-morning, Thomas had unlatched the shed door and pulled out his official EPA collection kit.
Every inspector trains for this. I just never thought I'd be using it on my own hives.
He swabbed the sticky residue from landing boards and sealed it in sterile vials, hands steady despite the anger. Then he walked the property line, mapping the drone's flight path from the tree line to the hives and back.
Whoever flew that thing knew the property. A straight run from the oak grove on the north side.
In the tall grass, he found a broken propeller blade, a piece of evidence that would carry a serial number.
This isn't random vandalism. Someone paid good money for this operation.
By noon, he had filled out the EPA incident report form, a document he'd issued to others a dozen times.
Now I have to treat this like any other case. Detach, analyze, build the chain.
He didn't yet know how the threads would connect, but his apiary was now a federal investigation site. He overnighted the samples to the EPA lab, securing the chain of custody form inside a reinforced envelope. Within 48 hours, the results landed in his inbox, a neonicotinoid variant that required a special import license.
This chemical is unregistered in any state database. Whoever bought it knew exactly what it does.
That evening, while idly scrolling next door, a post in the neighborhood group seized his attention. The post title read, "Bee Problem Handled," with a drone video showing mist falling on hives.
The video matches the attack exactly. She's so sure she'll never get caught.
The handle was anonymous, but the geotag matched the area near his property.
I need to preserve this. It could vanish the moment she gets nervous.
He downloaded the clip, then called his EPA contact to push for a faster analysis of the chemical. The case was building a momentum of its own. All that remained was connecting a name to the confession. He spent the next morning at his shed workstation, freezing frames of the drone video frame by frame. At the 7-second mark, in the corner of the footage, an upstairs window glowed. He zoomed in. The silhouette was clear, a woman in a fuchsia jacket, watching the spray. Thomas enhanced the image. The face was blurry, but the jacket was unmistakable, Barbara Whitfield.
She filmed her own crime, then posted the evidence herself. Her arrogance is the rope.
By noon, he had printed screen captures and added them to the binder with the lab report. He composed a formal EPA complaint, itemizing the unregistered pesticide, the residue analysis, and the video confession.
Time to stop being the quiet beekeeper. This ends now.
He emailed the file to Agent Chen at the regional office, requesting an immediate federal investigation. The email was brief, attached as evidence of illegal pesticide use. Sender, Thomas Reeves, Inspector 3921. The next morning, Thomas sat across a long table from two agents who knew him by his inspector number.
Inspector Reeves, we've reviewed your preliminary file. Tell us what you saw.
A drone released an unregistered neonicotinoid over my hives at 4 a.m. I collected samples and the lab confirmed the chemical.
And the video evidence? Is it admissible?
The poster never removed geotag data. It shows her watching the spray, plus the drone footage itself. It is a confession.
He slid printouts across the table, including the enhanced image of Barbara's silhouette in her window.
We can open a full investigation under FIFRA. This chemical is heavily restricted. Who is the suspect?
Barbara Whitfield, HOA Enforcement Chair. She had already threatened my hives publicly.
We will pull her financials, trace the drone, and interview the exterminator. You stay silent until we have an arrest warrant.
By noon, the file was stamped active federal investigation. Barbara Whitfield's next move would be her last. 2 days later, agents Chen and Miller canvassed the neighborhood, asking about drones and strange vans.
I saw a drone over the apiary at dawn, and a van under the oaks. It felt off.
She handed over a phone photo of a dark van with a faded exterminator logo. Barbara Whitfield heard the news from a nervous HOA board member. EPA agents were interviewing everyone.
It's just a coincidence. The fool said he used a drone, but no one can trace it.
She excused herself from the meeting and called Mike Dunn from her Range Rover.
Mike, it's Barbara. The EPA is sniffing around. Tell me you didn't leave evidence.
Mike Dunn was already in a cold sweat. EPA agents had visited his van that morning. They had the chemical analysis and a propeller blade that matched his drone. He told them nothing yet, but he knew the clock was ticking. The next morning, Mike Dunn was summoned to the EPA office.
Mike, we have the chemical match and a propeller blade from your drone. Cooperate or face prison.
She's not worth it. $5,000 isn't worth federal time.
He cracked. Every detail spilled out. The cash, the instructions, Barbara's gloating.
She gave me $5,000 cash, told me to fly at 4 a.m., said she'd watch from her window.
By afternoon, Agent Chen called Thomas Reeves to the office.
Inspector Mike confessed. We have more than enough to charge Barbara Whitfield with federal pesticide violations.
No plea deal. Maximum charges. She didn't just kill my bees, she poisoned the land my grandfather worked.
Thomas signed the formal complaint as an inspector, his signature a line in the sand. The arrest warrant was drafted that evening. Agents Chen and Miller loaded into the black SUV. The next morning, Barbara Whitfield stormed down the apiary path, her fuchsia jacket bright against the dew.
Reeves, I know you've been talking to the EPA. Drop whatever you're doing or I'll sue you for defamation.
You came all this way to threaten me with a lawsuit over a bee problem.
He set down his smoker can and met her glare without flinching.
I can make your life hell. You're one old man with a yard full of bugs. I have money and lawyers.
She still doesn't see the badge on my belt. Or maybe she thinks it's a decoration. This is no longer a conversation between neighbors, Barbara. The matter is out of my hands.
Out of his hands, the EPA can't do anything without proof. He's bluffing.
Thomas let the silence hang before he spoke again, his voice soft as a hive.
The bees have friends, Barbara. Friends in places that don't send letters first.
Barbara Whitfield drove home with her jaw clenched, replaying Thomas's calm warning in her head.
That old man knows nothing. The EPA can't act on a deleted post. I'll just scrub it and deny everything.
She tapped delete, but the post had already been shared dozens of times. The video was loose.
Even if I delete it, someone has screenshots. I need to shut this down before it goes further.
Across the street, Sarah Jennings had already taken a screenshot of the post the moment she saw it. She sent a message to Thomas. "Mr. Reeves, I saved this. Thought you might need it before it vanished."
She filmed her own crime. She posted it online. Now the whole neighborhood is sending me copies.
He forwarded the screenshot to Agent Chen, adding another time-stamped record to the file. The original post vanished from the feed, but copies had already been archived by the EPA. Barbara could no more scrub the internet than she could undo the damage she'd done to 60 hives. That evening, the HOA board held an emergency session in the clubhouse. Barbara Whitfield was nowhere on the agenda.
We just received notice that the EPA is investigating pesticide use linked to our enforcement chair. If we don't cooperate, the HOA could face millions in fines.
Thomas Reeves sat in a folding chair at the edge of the room, his binder of evidence resting on his knee.
Mr. Reeves, We've seen the initial complaint. Is it true she hired an exterminator to poison your hives?
She paid him $5,000 cash to drone spray a banned chemical. Half my apiary is dead. The EPA has his full confession.
A low murmur swept through the board members. Stanton's face had gone gray.
Effective immediately, Barbara Whitfield is removed as enforcement chair. We will provide every document, every email, every record to the EPA.
I don't need apologies. I need the HOA to formally acknowledge my apiary is grandfathered and untouched from now on.
Done. We'll vote a resolution tonight. No fines, no violations, no interference. Your bees are part of this community's history.
The vote was unanimous. Barbara's power collapsed in a single motion, leaving her alone with the crime she thought she'd concealed. The morning after the HOA vote, Barbara Whitfield appeared at the apiary gate. No blustery, just a crumpled envelope.
$50,000. Reeves, cash. Drop the investigation and I'll move out of the state. No one has to know.
She thinks my silence has a price. She still doesn't understand what she destroyed.
He looked at the envelope, then back at the hives where dead bees still littered the ground.
You killed 30 years of queens. You poisoned the soil my grandfather worked. And you want to buy your way out with an envelope?
I'll lose everything. My house, my reputation. Please, I'm begging you.
My bees were worth more than $50,000. They were worth more than your house.
Her face crumpled, the polished OA Karen reduced to a woman clutching a worthless bribe.
You already confessed on Nextdoor. The EPA has your video. There's no deal to be made.
She stood frozen, the envelope trembling in her hand, as the weight of what she had done finally settled on her shoulders. Later that evening, Thomas sat opposite Agents Chen and Miller as they spread a map across the conference table.
We'll serve the arrest warrant at her house tomorrow morning, 7 a.m. sharp. No warning, no chance to flee.
The evidence chain is solid. Chemical analysis, propeller serial, Mike's statement. This will stand.
30 years of beekeeping prepared me for this. Granddad would have said, watch the hive, not the hornet.
He took the final copy of the complaint and signed his name beneath his inspector number, 3921.
Inspector, this is your case. Do you want to be there when we pick her up?
No. My job was to protect the bees. The court will do the rest.
Outside, the black EPA SUV idled in the parking lot under a dark sky, its headlights cutting the mist. Agents Chen and Miller loaded their gear and reviewed the approach one final time. By dawn, the die would be cast. At 7:03 a.m., a black EPA SUV rolled silently into Barbara Whitfield's driveway, gravel barely crunching beneath its tires. She was stepping out of her front door when she saw them, fuchsia jacket unzipped, car keys in her hand.
What is this? You can't just show up at my house without notice.
Barbara Whitfield, we have a federal arrest warrant. You are charged with illegal pesticide application and conspiracy.
They can't have proof. That old man couldn't possibly have convinced the EPA to act.
Agent Miller unfolded the warrant, the chemical analysis, and a still frame from the drone video.
The video you posted shows you watching the drone. The chemical is unregistered. Mike Dunn gave us everything.
The color drained from her face. Her own Nextdoor post, the one she'd tried to delete, was now an exhibit in a federal case. Agent Chen read the Miranda rights as steel cuffs clicked around Barbara's wrists. She was led to the SUV, her whispered confession still echoing on the internet. 2 weeks later, a federal courtroom fell silent as the prosecution called its first exhibit, a social media post. On a large screen, the drone video played, mist descending on the hives, and in the corner, a window with a fuchsia silhouette. Barbara Whitfield's attorney stiffened, but she herself still wore a thin smile, as if this were a minor procedural delay. Then the prosecution froze the frame and zoomed in. The silhouette resolved into a face, her face.
The geotag matches the defendant's residence. The post was made by an account registered to her email address.
Barbara's smile evaporated. She grabbed her attorney's arm, whispering fiercely. In the gallery, Thomas Reeves sat with his hands folded. He did not smile, he just watched. The judge admitted the video as Exhibit A, noting the timestamp and unedited metadata.
This can't be happening. That old man couldn't have done this to me.
For the first time, Barbara Whitfield understood that her own voice had been the loudest witness against her. After a 30-minute recess, Barbara Whitfield re-entered the courtroom, her face ashen.
Guilty.
The judge accepted the plea on 2 federal counts: illegal application of an unregistered pesticide and conspiracy to violate FIFRA. The same afternoon, in a separate hearing, Mike Dunn surrendered his pest control license voluntarily.
$5,000 for a kid's birthday party, and I lost everything that mattered.
The judge then addressed the HOA board directly. Your enforcement chair used her position to commit a federal crime.
Your Honor, the association accepts full responsibility. We will fund whatever restoration is required.
They can't bring back the queens, but the land will heal. Granddad knew that.
The final order was entered. The HOA would fund a $1.2 million apiary restoration, including soil remediation and new hives. For the first time since the spraying, Thomas Reeves allowed himself to believe the bees would return. 3 days after the ruling, news trucks lined the road outside Thomas Reeves's property. The national morning shows ran the banner, "HOA Karen's drone confession leads to $1.2 million penalty." Barbara Whitfield's mugshot was placed beside the drone video she had proudly posted. Social media erupted. The phrase "Karma has a video file" trended for 2 days straight.
I'm no hero. The bees had a guardian, and it wasn't me, it was the law. People think they can erase the truth, but the internet is a hive. Once it's out, it lives forever.
At a press conference, Agent Chen credited Inspector Reeves. His evidence was the foundation of our prosecution. HOA President Arthur Stanton issued a public apology, vowing to complete the apiary restoration by spring. But the image that resonated most was Thomas Reeves among his hives, a man who had simply refused to quit. Her own words had convicted her, and the beekeeper's quiet justice was sealed with a clip she'd uploaded herself. Spring arrived at the apiary with a hum no pesticide could steal.
Welcome home, ladies. 60 hives rebuilt with the money of the woman who tried to destroy them.
He lifted a frame heavy with brood, the wax clean as new snow.
Granddad used to say, a good beekeeper doesn't fight the hornet, he strengthens the hive.
The soil tested clean, the sunflowers were tall, and the air carried only nectar.
She thought she was the predator, but the colony was always stronger.
The HOA had long abandoned any claim over the apiary. Its sign now read, "Reeves Heritage Hives."
This is what justice feels like. Not vengeance, but a garden in full bloom.
And as the sun set, the bees flew on, oblivious to the war fought for them and the quiet man who had simply refused to quit.